Hello, everybody, and welcome to Infinite Leaders Live. I'm Lewis Keynes, and our why is all about being better. We want to support infinite learning for everybody involved in education, regardless of their role, to be willing to listen, learn, and share, in order to be better educators and also be better humans. As ever, I'm joined by my mate, Alan Dunstan.
Thanks, Lewis. Really looking forward to diving deeper into understanding how leaders with an infinite mindset translate this across to their teams. We want to focus on the things you don't get taught at university or any courses. We want real life lessons from real life people with real life experience.
And we're learning too. This isn't our day job, and we'll record live, so I'm sure there'll be a few mistakes. We'd love your feedback, so please get in touch via Twitter. And from feedback, I can add this week that you can find us on our YouTube channel, The Infinite Learners. Our show is called Infinite Leaders Live. You can check out our website, www.theinfinitelearners.com. And also, with a bit of luck, we'll be on podcasts soon. So with all that kind of stuff out of the way, Alan, shall we crack on?
Yeah, great. Looking forward to today's guest, which is Jo Lee. And Jo Lee is currently the Director of Performing Arts and a member of the senior leadership team at Cranleigh School in Abu Dhabi. She's an inspirational drama specialist who has worked in schools in the UK, Malaysia and Bahrain. She has a real passion for drama and the performing arts, and I'm sure this will shine through today. So Jo, welcome. It's great to have you on the show, and I know you've watched the last three and you have some reflections you'd like to share to start.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here. I've been really inspired by the work that you guys are doing. I think it's absolutely fantastic and a wonderful opportunity, especially during this time of remote learning and lockdown, to be able to collaborate in this way. Simon Mann was one of my first principals when I arrived in Garden in Malaysia. He was the person who appointed me to my first official leadership position as head of drama. And he talked in his interview about enjoying employing people who had that potential to grow and to develop their role. And when he said that, when I heard it, I thought, yeah, absolutely. That was me over 10 years ago now, but that was certainly me in that position. And I very much felt that my time at Garden, that I developed my leadership strategies and my leadership confidence and professional confidence in line with the growth of the school. And so that was a really interesting moment of reflection. One of the things that I really enjoyed about Scott's interview was that he talked about leaders being visible. And it made me reflect about whether sports people who've gone into leadership and performing arts specialists who've gone into leadership, whether that concept of being visible is easier for us. We are used to being at the side of the pitch. We are used to being welcoming people into an auditorium and establishing those relationships with families, with colleagues, with pupils. And so I just reflected about whether that might be easier for people with sporting and performing arts backgrounds going into leadership than it might be for somebody in maths or science or another area. And then obviously we saw Bex's interview, the most recent one last week, and that was just fascinating for me because she talked about the work-life balance and her acknowledging that her work is her life and it's all part of one. And by trying to separate her work and separate her home life, actually she was on a hiding to nothing and would always feel that she was guilty or that she was failing in some way. And I think that is such a fundamental message going forwards. Because it's so true, especially in schools that are all consuming, and international schools, boarding schools, they are consuming. They really want a lot from you and you give a lot, and therefore it means that when you do give your all, it's so much harder when it is time to step away. And when I read your article, Alan, about how it feels to leave a school and to move on, I 100% identified with that. When I left Malaysia, when I left my school in the UK, those schools where you've put years of your life into them, you've seen some of these pupils all the way through, you've seen their progression, and you've really cared and given your all. I think it has a huge impact on you, and it does mean that stepping away, even if it's to an exciting challenge, I think does have a grieving process, and I liked that you acknowledge that as well as you embark upon this next chapter.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. It is hard, and I'm going through that process now as Lewis is, and as you've been through when you left Garden and St Christopher's in Bahrain as well. What really inspires you, Joe, to get out of bed every day?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I mean, the initial instance is that you need to, so there's some kind of, timeline. There's the alarms going off, and you need to be in school, or at the moment you need to be online at a certain point. But in terms of the more holistic side, for me, it's definitely the community that we're a part of. What you will give back to that community, what they will give to you, and I do think, especially in the kind of schools that we're working in international schools, there is a pace and a momentum that goes with them. And some people can find that overwhelming occasionally, and some people find it energizing. And for me, it's really energizing, and it's that momentum and that sense of what you're giving to the community that definitely gets me out of bed in the morning.
Tell us how drama and the arts fit into that, Joe. How does that create the momentum or add to it?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is quite interesting, one of the things I was excited about sharing with you in terms of performing arts, as opposed to roles like the traditional leadership roles of doing the timetable or the more pastoral side, I never thought that I would be in a position of being a member of senior management or a senior leader. I thought that if I was going to stay with drama and not go into organising the timetable or not going into pastoral care, then that meant that there would be some kind of threshold to my leadership experience. And for a long time, I was, absolutely fine with that. I didn't, I wasn't especially aspiring to do my current role. What was super exciting was that I completed a master's course a few years ago, and during that time had the opportunity to try to use drama as a pedagogical tool with various other members of the school. And that meant that I was working with colleagues in the pre-prep department, I was working with Arabic colleagues, I was working with science, with maths, and I really wanted to prove that drama could influence positively the way that all kinds of curriculum can be delivered. And I am especially lucky at my current school that we offer drama from year 3 all the way up to year 13. It's unusual to have drama specialists teaching, especially in the prep school area. Drama's often only a specialist subject from year 7 and above, so age 11 and above. So coming into an environment where drama was going to be ingrained within the curriculum and performing arts was going to be established from such a young age all the way up through the school, that has been just the most wonderful challenge to develop and build. I'd never taught primary before I started at Cranleigh. I'd only ever taught from age 11 up. And so this school has offered me huge opportunities to extend my own teaching range, to think about how the curriculum and the drama curriculum in particular can support other areas of learning. So for example, if the year 3s are doing a Roman project, we'll do work about the Romans within drama. If the year 5s are looking at myths and legends in English, then we will do something like that in drama. So building that curriculum was a joy. It was really exciting and really, really allowed for the collaboration that is one of my guiding principles, which I know is something that you guys talk about. And I've thought about what are the guiding principles for me, and that area of collaboration is so exciting, and that's what performing arts has given me, especially at this school.
On that kind of subject of collaboration, I thought you made a really interesting point there, that maybe your perception, not now I imagine, but a few years ago, was that school leadership was maybe a list of jobs that you didn't necessarily fancy too much, such as you alluded to there, creating a timetable. And and that might have been that list of jobs rather than a role that you feel you could nurture. But obviously now the shoe's on the other foot, and you're in you're in a leadership team, and you're in a position of responsibility. What is it about your pedagogy and your experience with drama that's really helping you at the moment get to grips with that new position?
Well, when it comes to drama, we always talk about transferable skills. Drama is the kind of subject, especially when you get to GCSE and A-level, that often needs selling. It needs promoting to other people. We need to make sure that parents are on board. Often they haven't had drama in their own education, so they're not really sure what it's about. They'd be totally fine with their child being part of a school show, but actually seeing it as an academic subject is often quite a bit of a challenge for them. And so one of the ways that we promote drama is talking about those transferable skills and saying things like, any career that you go into will want teamwork, will want you to be able to present yourself, will want you to be able to collaborate with other people, to meet deadlines, to have that confidence. And I would say that in the particular role that I'm in now, all of those skills that I have had and that I've tried to give the opportunities for my pupils, I am really having to tap into those now, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. It's very similar to what myself and Lewis are looking at with transferable skills in PE and concept-based learning, and it's a very much a step away from normal practice. And I love how you talked about there going in and working with themes in the primary school, and then that affects the way you teach your lessons, and it's a real massive effort. You talked about collaboration as a guiding principles. What are your other guiding principles as a leader and as a teacher?
In drama, and I've reflected upon this quite a bit, especially knowing that I was coming to talk to you guys, one of the things that's really important is being able to take risks and being able to take creative risks. And so much of what we do to allow pupils to take creative risks is to enable that trust, is to enable that collaboration so that they can push themselves that little bit. And be it on the stage, be it in a performance in front of their peers, be it in a presentation, whatever the context is, trying to take those creative risks is especially important. And how we do that is obviously building trust, showing that we are focusing on the positive. And I think looking for the positive would definitely be something that that would be important. Recognizing that everybody is coming to whatever the task is at a different level. There are some pupils who will kind of come in and they're all ready to go. They've had loads of experience and maybe they are super confident at presenting, but they're not so good at collaborating in teamwork and supporting more reserved peers. Whereas there are others who have got a lot to give, but they're just going to take that little bit longer to develop that confidence. And one of the things that I thought about knowing that I was coming to talk to you is, am I able to take creative risks as a leader myself? This is something that I am asking of the students that I teach, that I'd very much hope that I'm inspiring within my colleagues. But as a relatively new senior leader, I thought, yeah, this is one of the things that I talk about a lot in terms of taking risks and hoping that they'll be able to take creative risks and creating the environment where that's possible. But as you become a leader and the stakes become higher and more people are looking at you, and if you mess up, there's no hiding it. I think in terms of professional confidence, it's something that I'm definitely still working on myself.
Yeah, I love that, Joe. The risk taking and the creative risk. Tell us about one that's gone wrong and what you did, and in terms of how you progressed from that.
Well, it's been really interesting during remote learning that we have been trying to create bespoke projects that allow for collaboration, even though we're creating things at a distance. And so obviously what we needed to do was to try to motivate the staff, motivate the pupils. We arranged some drop-down days, and this was all skills-based learning, and we were creating a carousel of different activities that we were presenting to the pupils, and they would carousel around so these different groups, trying out these different skills, building up to these presentations. So I 100% was enthusiastic. I was behind this project. I thought it was wonderful that we were able to offer something during this time of remote learning. We could have just focused on the timetabled lessons, but we were really taking the opportunity to offer something above and beyond what we were doing. And I wanted to motivate the staff. I wanted to say to them, look, the planning's in place. Don't you worry. We've got a whole team that are working on this. You just need to arrive at these sessions ready to deliver and to support the pupils. And I had this line, and I kept making these videos, these sort of tutorials for staff, just having to talk them through how the structure was going to work and how we were going to divide up the pupils, all the logistics of that. And we eventually started to get some feedback through. And one of the lines of feedback was, for God's sake, stop telling us to be so enthusiastic. And the line was, we are professional people. You do not stop telling us to bring our enthusiasm. And I thought, oh yeah. And of course, and there are lots of reasons why I was doing it. I was, it's very, it's well and good, one thing, trying to motivate people when you're sat in your own room, in your bedroom, in your living room, trying to make these videos, trying to gee everybody up and motivate them. And we were taking these creative risks trying to generate this project, but at the same time it would have been so much easier to have judged my audience if they were sat there in front of me with body language and facial expressions and interaction. And so that was a great example where I felt I'd taken this risk and like energizing this project, and they were basically like, oh, pipe down. So that's where we got up to.
You've been very honest there, Joe, about suggesting that creative risks is something that you really want the students to take, but maybe as a leader that's something that you're still trying to work on. What can people do that work with others that really allows them to feel supported taking risks?
Bex talked about surrounding yourself with people who are positive. And I have been incredibly, incredibly lucky in my career that I have had a whole plethora of amazing mentors. And I think being proactive in looking for those opportunities, being reflective about yourself as a practitioner, knowing what you're doing well, asking for creative criticism, having a critical friend, I think is what I'm saying. Being able to have those, sort of those conversations. And when you're asking for constructive criticism, when you're asking for a critical friend to be able to observe your work and to give you feedback, you are opening yourself up to being a little bit vulnerable and taking those creative risks. And that's something that I think once you start doing it, it becomes easier. And once you've done it and you get the praise and you get the advice, and you need to listen to both, because it's so easy to just focus on the negative and not to hear all of it. I think that's, it's a discipline in a sense to be able to hear the positive, reflect upon what didn't go so well, and then to move forwards. And again, this is something that we would do as standard practice within drama lessons. Little year threes would be watching each other's work back and giving each other like a star for something good and a wish for something that they'd like to improve as they get further up the school, or what went well and even better if. And it's amazing how that seems fine within certain contexts. And then when it gets to the point where you are in a position of leadership that's slightly newer, I think actually opening yourself up to that is a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept. How we're doing that with all the students. We're trying to build in reflection, and it's amazing how reflection then can suddenly stop unless you actually actively seek it. I asked this to Rebecca, and it was interesting how she came out with this. Is you're very enthusiastic, you're so positive. How do you then deal with people who are not as enthusiastic as you, or not as positive. You've got to lead them people.
Yeah, when you asked this to Bex, I sort of leant in wanting to wanting to hear her answer, and I really agree with what she said. It's hugely difficult. I think I'm very lucky within drama that there are so many people that have seen the value of the work that we do within performing arts, and are there to help and are very much there to support the kids. So when we are asking for people to help out with a show, we have plenty of volunteers. When we're asking for, for that kind of support, and in things like drama, in productions, they do take on a life of their own. And I think that you've got to be clear about what you're asking. And one of the things that I've reflected upon is that I know exactly what I'm asking as a teacher. I'm very clear what I'm asking as a head of department, having been head of department in in 3 schools. Now that I'm in that whole school level, I'm slightly less certain of what I'm asking of the team. And I think going back to having those negative conversations, I think it's not avoiding them. If there's somebody who really needs to to say what they need to say, then so if you hear it, you acknowledge it, and then try to build on it, try to move on, and to realize that everybody's trying to bring something. They might not always be able to match your level of positivity and enthusiasm, which as the video that I sent out to staff and got the feedback from made me reflect upon, is that they can people bring different things to the table, and and that's fine. And I think if you can focus on those positives and be able to be grateful for them and to nurture them and to appreciate them, then what my hope is that that's how you take people along the journey with you. It's certainly the way that it's worked for us within performing arts, especially as the momentum has grown, as the school has grown. That's so that has just been wonderful. The support that we felt has been just tremendous from the whole community, from the parents, from the pupils, from the wider community here in Abu Dhabi. We've had some amazing support, connections that we're making with different schools and different festivals. That's all been wonderful. I think what you're talking about, Alan, is when you're having to propose something that people really don't want to do. And that bit I'm still struggling with. Who doesn't want to, if you're saying, come on, we're putting on this show, and look at all this, and you can really sell it. Like I could sell any production. Selling, like, would you like to rewrite this policy? Selling, would you going to restructure this? It's a different challenge, and one that I'm definitely still working on.
And it's not often people are called for less enthusiasm. So I think you're in a small minority there, Joe. You mentioned reflection, and you've talked about positivity a lot. I'm presuming that they're things that you use to just check in with yourself and to see where you're at. What else would be on that list of things that you feel is really important?
Tell me again, Lewis, in terms of leadership, like a checklist of things.
Yeah, so in terms of a toolkit really that you use to try and keep yourself in check, just to self-critique and to self-reflect. You talked about reflection in depth and that importance of being positive and keeping a positive spin on things, being kind to yourself really, and looking at what you've done well and not just focusing on the negatives. Would there be anything else that would be on that list for you as a department head or as a senior leader, where you feel that there are things that you do at punctuated points through the day, through the week, through the year, just to check where you're at and to see if you're on top of the things you want to be on top of?
Yeah, I really like that concept of checking and sort of having little milestones. One of the reasons that I knew that I wasn't going to be a pastoral lead was because as a pastoral lead, you never really know what your day is going to be like. You can have a plan for your day, but then all of a sudden something can happen and your day is sideswiped. Whereas within performing arts and a little bit within sports, I'm guessing with kind of fixtures and timetables and and all the planning, we know when our peaks and troughs of the year are going to be. we know that, for example, the end of term in November, there will be, you know, sort of 2 shows, 1 concert, 1 winter festival. What, you know, sort of it will be, you know, really, really intense during that time. So one of the things that I've learned to do is to forward plan, to try to make sure that I've got, you know, as much done as possible in the run up to those months, down to the really little things like making sure that you've got, in, you know, sort of enough toothpaste or whatever it is, you know, sort of enough in. You know, I'm very lucky now that I've got a husband that, you know, helps out with that. But, you know, back in the day, before I met Tom, it was, you know, something that I really had to look out for, because it wasn't going to be the big stuff. It was going to be waking up in the morning and finding you've got no toothpaste or your shampoo had run out. It was going to be that would be, you know, sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. So in those kind of terms, making sure, really looking for those peaks and troughs, and making sure that you know, and it's something that I've tried to really support my team with by saying, look, we know this is going to be a dig deep time. What can we do before? What can we do afterwards? What's interesting now that I'm now part of, obviously very much still with performing arts, but also more of a whole school role, is that what you'll find is that where you think you've you've peaked and then, you know, it should settle down, something else straight away comes back in. And so in terms of my own personal care, that's something that I'm definitely still working on, Lewis. I don't have all the answers to that, trying to keep that balance. Both Scott and Simon talked about exercise, and how Simon said something like, it doesn't matter how tired I am, I'm always going to exercise. And I was like, oh, I'd have to say that for me, making sure to maintain that exercise, to maintain that self-care, is something that I have to consciously do. Otherwise, it would be very easy for it to be, you know, so far too late at night, and me not having, you know, done what I needed to do for myself.
So those 3 things are very much anchors then, if I've got it right, the forward planning and the being able to plan ahead, get organised and respond where possible rather than react, by the sounds of it, reflecting and surrounding yourself with that positivity and being kind to yourself. I think they're 3 really, really good takeaways. And the other takeaway would be for me, don't approach a drama teacher in the last week before Christmas holidays. I think that's just as valuable as those 3.
Fantastic. I'd just like to bring it back a step or 2 here. So we've all worked under some fantastic leaders, and we've talked about Simon Mann being quite influential in all our careers. What's the best bit of leadership advice you've ever been given, Jo?
There was a book that I read whilst I was doing my master's that I would really recommend. It's called What's Worth Fighting For in Your School. And it talks about being interactive rather than hyperactive. And going back to, you know, to what we were saying before about, you know, levels of enthusiasm, it really supports that idea of reflection. It really supports that idea of continued professional development, which is what you guys are doing, what attracted me so much to the work that you're doing at the minute, but allowing for that sense of collaboration, allowing for that reflection, and offering those opportunities that are not one size fits all. We've all been to CPD sessions where the whole of the staff are brought in and are told about one concept, and then one person has been flown in, and it might cost a fortune to fly them in, and they give you a day or 2 days maybe, and then, you know, and then they're off, and, you know, and you're left with this information. But for the individuals within that school, within the community, it's going to filter through in different ways. And if you want whatever it was that was presented to actually make lasting change, it has to be because it's something meaningful for your department or for your area of the school. And I think that's really important, and trying to filter that so that you're not hyperactive. Maybe it's a case of picking your battles, of knowing what are our priorities. A lot of the people you've had on have talked about vision, and I did work with Simon when he was first at Garden, and we were creating that vision. And it was fascinating coming from established schools. My first school in the UK is now over 500 years old. My school now is just over 5 years old. And it's fascinating to see what does that vision mean when not only within the different context that you're in, the different country that you're in, the different individuals that you're working with, but the journey that the school is on. My current school is definitely one where the vision is there, the ethos is certainly there, but the actual nuts and bolts of some of those concepts are still being developed, and we're still finding our way with them. And that is hugely, hugely exciting. It's a really wonderful environment to work in, especially if you thrive on that sense of change and that sense of momentum. You can't say about this school that, well, it's always been done like this, so we're not going to change it. Or you can't say about that staff, oh, well, they've been here for donkey's years and you're never going to change them, because none of us have been here longer than 6 years. I'm one of the founding members of staff, and we're coming up to the end of our 6th year, and that's as far as it goes. So from that sense, that idea of being interactive, not hyperactive, is something that for me is really significant. And again, something totally honest, something I've definitely got to work on and remind myself about. I'm very good at saying yes to lots of things and then letting them build up and then checking myself and realigning my priorities to move forwards.
What's the favourite part of your job, Joe? What bit do you really, really enjoy on a day-to-day basis?
The thing that I'm missing most at the moment, 100%, is the interaction with the kids. And it's not even the really nitty-gritty of the pedagogy, which I adore. I think it's that sense of community. One of the things, we've been going back into school to close down the school, ready for the long summer holiday, and seeing those empty corridors is just so strange. It's definitely that sense of community. And in big schools, in big international schools, or big schools in general with thousands of people, you're never going to be all things to all people. You just can't. In a school, it's with huge campuses, with huge teachers. One of my big fears at the start of any school year is that I go to introduce myself to a member of staff who actually has already been at the school for several years, and I just haven't crossed them because they're on the other side of the campus, and we're there together. But it's definitely that sense of community. And it's so funny because so often if I'm tearing down a corridor, trying to get from one end of the school to the other, and where it's a relatively big campus, so it can take you over 5 minutes to cross the campus if you're at one end to the other. And so often getting down those corridors is just something that you've got to do. You've just got to, you've got to move fast. You've got to be at the next place. And I thought, gracious, how interesting that is one of the things that I've really missed, being there, just part of the bustle of it all, being part of that community, and knowing that I've been given this opportunity to be able to move performing arts forwards when so many countries, so many schools do not have those opportunities. I am incredibly, incredibly grateful for that.
You've got a platform here, Joe. Send a message. What would you say to those schools that don't have performing arts as part of their curriculum? Why is it so important?
Performing arts is the way that you can find out about yourself. If you look around the world at the moment, we are struggling hugely on all kinds of different levels, and there are all sorts of conversations that need to be had. And in performing arts, you can have a platform to explore those within a safe space. And I think that is hugely important. And one of the things that I love about it is that it is equally as important for little kids in pre-prep and the start of their school careers, all the way through to teenagers. I think it's the most wonderful way of exploring who you are, having the opportunity to step into other people's shoes, seeing and trying to empathize or understand or even argue an opinion that might not be your own can only help to consolidate your own beliefs and to move things forwards. So for me, so Simon talked beautifully about the importance of rugby, and what it means when you are out there and you have to take that risk, and you've got to look after each other, because there's the real potential that you could be hurt. And if you don't look after each other and if you don't work together, there can be consequences. For me, take that rugby pitch, turn it into the world, and that is performing arts. If we don't have the opportunity to have those conversations, to explore things, to find out who we are, then yeah, this is the way forwards, definitely.
Thanks, Joe. We're going to move towards our quick fire questions at the end. I love the fact you worked in a school where one's got a massive history and one's creating a history. Now, in terms of the schools you've worked on, does leaving a legacy matter to you?
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things of being, and it was called the founding family when we first started, the founding family, the founding teachers. I am the founding head of drama. The head is the founding headmaster. And I think there is something about that is very special. And I think it's what attracts a lot of teachers to new schools, to startup schools, especially on the international circuit. There are challenges there, but you know that what you are establishing is a first within that community, for that school. However, I think it would be wrong to think that should be your major focus, because we often say you're only as good as your last show, you're only as good as your last gig. It's once you go and you move on to the next school, and we know that international schools are transient by nature, it will only be a very few years before the pupils who you've left behind are then through, and then they're somebody else's. So I think legacy in the sense of doing your best, of setting high standards, of wanting the place that you leave to be in a better situation than you found it, yes, 100%. I think if it's your sole goal, then it's slightly misguided.
One piece of advice, Joe, that you would give, let's say, a young performing arts teacher that maybe wants to go into leadership?
I would suggest that they just give it a try, to find different ways of showing that leadership, to be able to model the experiences and going back to those transferable skills. Simon appointed me as head of drama because I'd been the teacher in charge of the prefects. My current school appointed me as director of performing arts because I'd done research that proved that I could work beyond the drama department in a whole school capacity. It wasn't the reason that I did that work. I did it anyway, but I think emphasizing those transferable skills and looking for those opportunities is a wonderful way to be able to progress in any area of your career.
And the last one, Joe, a bit of fun to finish on, is which 3 leaders in history would you love to go out for a meal with?
See, guys, this is getting harder and harder as the weeks go on. And, so like Gandhi's been taken. Simon's saying Gandhi would make a good drinking partner. That was one of the highlights of your opening speech. I had to choose people who were really strong within the creative arts. So Sir Ken Robinson is a huge advocate for creativity within schools, and his TED Talk is absolutely remarkable. I think it's one of the most watched TED Talks ever about why creativity in schools is important. Dorothy Heathcott was one of the founding drama teachers, and her philosophies and her pedagogy, she's long gone now, love her, but I think actually if we were having a meal, she'd probably be the one to cook it, because apparently people would come to her house and would be served really kind of crusty loaves of bread and hearty soup, and and that would be her. And then Emma Rice is a fascinating writer and artistic director, and she was the artistic director of the Globe Theatre for a very short amount of time, only a few years, and they obviously faced huge leadership issues during her time there, and was then essentially asked to step away, and they chose somebody else because she was trying to facilitate change that they weren't ready for. So thinking about that in terms of a leadership standpoint, I'd be fascinated to hear what her experience was and how she got through it while still advocating for performing arts.
Super.
Well, thank you, Joe, for coming on Infinite Leaders Live. It's been some magnificent messages that are coming across there, and I've got 2 pages of notes that I've wrote myself that I took away from it. So that's fantastic. So thank you very much again, and we look forward to hearing about your work in the future.
I'm also enjoying how Alan's just letting those 3 names at the end slip by as if he knows all 3 of them. I'll be on Google straight away after this. I'll be quite honest with you.
I'm gonna straight on to see Ken Robinson, I think, about creativity.
Joe, it's been a pleasure to chat to you. Thank you very much for being so honest and open. It's really refreshing to speak to you. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for the work you're doing. I think it's wonderful. Well done. Keep it up.
Cheers. Bye.